it's the Popo, Ryan Tillman. Them have it. Savage on the set, AJ. What up, boy? Ryan Tillman. Let him have it. Savage on the set. Oh no, it's the Popo, Ryan Tillman. Let him have it. Savage on the set, AJ.
Hey, yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of It's Needed Podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Bears United, and I am joined by the light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, it's the Popo. Everybody, what's going on, broski?
Hey, yeah, what's up, everybody? Coming to you live from the 614 Columbus, Ohio.
That deep voice. I'll be coming to you from the Columbus, Ohio here in T-minus 3.5 weeks, I think, 4 weeks or so.
Yes, sir. Big things playing.
Buddy.
Big things playing.
I'm about to go ahead and show y'all what it's like, man. How to live a real life. You know what I'm saying, son?
Yeah,
Southern California way, son.
I kind of like it out here. Real estate is cheap, and people are happy, and you got laws that kind of make sense. I don't know what to do with myself.
No acai bowls.
Oh man,
We got acai. I'll take you to an acai spot.
We're also joined by himself.
Let me mute myself.
Oh yeah,
I wasn't gonna come on camera because I look like one of those mugshots from those like school shooter guys. So I was gonna stay off today.
bro. Don't even get me
I'm
started.
not taking
man.
care of myself today.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna put that. We're gonna talk about that. So, anyways, what's up, Billy?
I'm doing great.
I'm
everyone.
doing great. Have you guys seen the new Thor movie? I know Billy hasn't.
I need to though. I heard it was good.
Who'd you hear that from?
Jones calling him out right now. My partner at work, Jones. He said it.
Who'd you hear that from, bro? That
Oh,
was
he
the
did.
wackest Thor movie I've seen, bro.
Really?
Real talk.
Let's see some comments if anyone's ever seen it.
Anybody that's watching this right now, have you guys anybody in here seen the new Thor movie? Bro, they I'm not trying to give it away or nothing like that, but they made
tell us what
Thor seem
happens.
so soft.
So what? So soft?
They made Thor seem so soft, bro, and like I don't know, and everybody just
where would
special
you
now,
rank
bro.
him at? Like in the grand
Thor is
scheme
one of the
like,
best Avengers, bro. He was.
Whoa.
Well, first of all, who you gonna say? Spider-Man?
You said like the best?
I said one of the best.
First
It's
off,
different.
Iron Man, number one, hands down.
He's kind of their leader. For sure.
Iron Man died, so
He sacrificed himself for everything.
I love you
Iron Man's
3000.
dead.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay, so I love you 3000. That's what he said when he died. Come on. We talking
Okay,
about Marvel
so-
right now.
So Iron Man, I'll give it to Iron Man. He's up there. Is Iron Man, Black Panther, and Thor. They were my top three.
That's tough. Did you feel obligated to say Black Panther? Is that why you said that, or
It is
'Cause when you
not
said that,
February, y'all.
Billy went,
It is not February. But
as soon as you said Billy went,
He's my favorite.
Billy's like,
Black Panther's
man,
my favorite.
Billy's like, you know, it's Captain America, guys.
I actually don't like Captain America movies. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
did y'all watch
So
Stranger
Brandon,
Things?
you said you saw it yesterday. What'd you think? What'd you think, Brandon? I mean, we got some people that said they saw it.
Just saw it. No opinion.
Bro, just
Yeah,
saw it.
he's
I
like,
seen
yeah,
it.
yeah, bro. It was, anyways. Don't waste your money. It's just it's almost as bad as Jurassic World, which
I heard that was bad too.
it was a total waste of time, bro. I got bored. Like I was waiting the last 20 minutes of the movie. I'm like, man, what?
I
couldn't take
rewatched
it
the
over
old
in
one.
theater.
The first one's the only one worth watching, I think, for Jurassic Parks.
Oh,
like the
yeah.
originals. First one's great.
No, the one that they had when they first went to the amusement park, that one was actually pretty
With
good.
the first one of Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. That was good
yeah.
too.
That one
Where they
was
were like in the
legit.
balls, like traveling around, like the little glass balls.
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
pretty good.
But once they start having, dinosaurs on Mars and everything like that, then
I didn't know that part. Spoiler alert. So.
No,
Did you
I just
know that the Fast and Furious was trying to find a way to like morph with Jurassic Park? Did y'all know that?
Oh, Lord.
They need to stop making those.
That's what. Well, that's
Apparently
what.
they make money.
That's what Thor did, bro. Anybody can have powers now. Thor, bro. You know what I'm talking?
He's got
when you watch
Teletubbies in the
movies, bro,
background.
pretty much. It was that. It was literally, bro. It was just like that.
I want to know the demographic that is like, oh, Fast Furious 11 pre-sale tickets in line. Like, who's doing that? Because it's
No
not me.
Not
Nobody's
one
doing it.
person.
They're
was
making them.
pre-sailing.
Well, here was the thing about Thor, bro. The nostalgia behind it was that nobody can pick up his hammer other than Captain America.
Wait, I think this is a big spoiler, right?
Okay.
I feel like it's definitely a big spoiler alert
Let's
too.
just stop. Let's just.
All right. Well, I'm trying to save y'all from wasting however much money y'all gonna spend on the movie anyway. So y'all can thank me later.
I'm gonna put like a warning at the beginning of the podcast.
Well, go see what's
Pee Wee Herman's on his
what's
bike, just twirling the hammer, just la 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 la.
yeah, pretty much, bro. Pretty much. Go see Top Gun for the second, third time.
Angie, Top Gun was amazing.
Yeah, you won't be let down. Just go see Top Gun for a third time, y'all.
I ain't seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen
Top
it.
Gun. Anyways, long story short, I digress. What I want to do is I want to start off on some positive news. So it was actually pretty dope because we've had like a guest for the last 4 weeks. I think we've had a whole bunch of guests. But I had somebody reach out to me they listened to all of our episodes, but this is what they said after listening to our Father's Day episode. So it says this, quote unquote, just listen to your Father's Day episode of your podcast about the next generation of law enforcement. It was really good. I have finally been hired with Washington County Sheriff's Office in Minnesota. It took me 7 years of working towards this and nearly 70 submitted applications. What kept me going was knowing God was calling me to this profession, but I also knew that this was the perfect time to get in despite the climate like you and AJ mentioned. Family and friends questioned why I kept applying, and the reason I told them is I felt called, but I also wanted to help educate and truly engage the community. I believe serving the community is taking the time to talk with people. As a recruit, I have had FTOs tell me to make it short and sweet and to not talk with people once that the call for information was gathered. And it's hard for me to do that when I know having conversations can help build trust and develop solid relationships. Well, if he was working, he probably got fired now that I threw his FTOs under the bus. But anyways, let me finish the message. Lastly, he says, anyways, sorry for the long-winded message. Just want to say thanks for your podcast and the work you guys do. It truly does encourage and inspire people.
Don't say his name.
People to get out there and do. Yeah, I can't see, my phone is tripping right now. But yeah, you guys get the gist of it. So that was dope, man. Shout out to you. Really, really appreciate you tuning in, listening to us. That means the world to us. That's why we still show up. We always say that. What are you gonna say?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I'm getting to 70 applications. So kudos to you, brother. Kudos to you.
Straight up.
Perseverance, man.
Straight up. I definitely
at about 10. I'm applying to the fire department, dog. I'm just
bruh. Yeah.
Which is even harder.
Yeah,
right?
I'm about to say if law enforcement is taking fire, it's definitely about to take.
No, not harder. I meant like, isn't it harder to get a job in fire? Like there's less positions and stuff. Is that true? Maybe that's just California.
No, it is. Well, here it is in California.
Oh yeah, because y'all need firefighters like for real out there. Ours be sleep. Ours be working, but yeah, y'all. I feel like y'all's working a little bit harder because y'all got legit forest fires.
So, anyways, before we get, so we haven't really had a chance to every week for like the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've actually had topics that we've, obviously our guest speakers have been on for, which has been good. But we haven't really got to talk about real current events. There's been a lot that's happened since, we've been on. Obviously, the shooting of what was I can't even think of the guy's name right now. The guy that was shot 60 times. Did you hear the AJ?
Did I see the video?
Yeah,
I did see the video.
Yeah. So we
Jaylen Walker.
Yeah, Jaylen Walker. So we didn't get a chance to talk about that. I do want to talk about that here again. But before we go there, I want to show this video because this is trending. I literally just saw this video today. I actually just posted a reel on it about it. It's pretty disturbing. So let's play the video, and then I'm gonna go ahead. We'll talk about it. So let's watch the video. Billy, go ahead and cue it up if you don't mind. And then yeah. So it was a little delayed. If you're watching this in your car, it's that kid, he can't be more than 4 years old. He can't be older than 4. He has a whole group around him. They roasting the cops, but they're cussing him out. The little kid actually starts swinging on the cops. That is disturbing. I mean, AJ, what's your take on that? What's your first take when you watch that?
It's not cute. Like, and I think that's like, I think we've grown to like a society where we look at that and go like, oh, that's funny, or like, that's cute. Like, look at these little kids. But like, if that's his mindset now, like, what's it going to be when he gets older. But I will say this, and I could be wrong about this. That could also show the trust that those kids have in those particular officers. Now I could be wrong in that, and the only reason I say that is because I know like a group of young, they're not that young. I mean, they're probably between 10 and 14, 15. Anytime I pull up on them, they start going ham on me, like, oh, look at you ugly, and like, going in on me, and I'll give it back to them. But it's very friendly between us, and like, I mean, they've even like hit me with super soakers before, like when I've been driving in the street. Now they know when I'm serious and they know when I'm not. I feel like that may be the difference. But it could show how comfortable those kids are around those particular officers. I'm not 100% sold on that, but yeah, that's not cute.
I never thought about it from that perspective, but even so, let's just say that is the case. Man, I don't know. I mean, their mouth and just
that's the difference. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's out there like swinging on the officer. And again, like you said, I never thought about it from that angle. Like maybe they're playing, but at the end of the day, bro, like everybody's entitled to how they raise their children. But we have a real serious, if we don't acknowledge the problem that we have with how we raise our children, then we are a part of the problem. And I think society is lacking that. It's interesting to me. We put so much emphasis and effort on so many other issues, as opposed to just focusing on the family. I've said this before on this podcast, like there should be way more dads in the home, but they're not. They're like, there's no accountability. People just have kids for the sake of having kids and don't want to take on the responsibility of being an active parent, not just a parent, but an active parent, like actually listening to your kids, showing your kids love, spending time with them, taking them places. Even if you don't have money, you don't have to have money to go take your kid to the park and just play with them for a little bit, or go outside and throw the ball with them. And so I don't know. It's just terrible to me. Like I'm just thinking, I look at this video and it just makes me kind of sad to know like where are the parents at. This is.
I mean, one of the kids has a diaper on still, like just watching all of that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Man, I'm trying to see if you can see like a patch. Like, where is this from? Like a badge or something. But that is the difference between like these kids and like the ones that I was talking about. Is like they don't have to cross that line. They cussing. Yeah, it's a lot. But
it's just like so much anger. Like that kid is just like so much anger. Like, where do you come at just like trying to like fight that like at that age? Like, like me and my sons, we'll like wrestle around, we'll play around, but nothing to where like the way he's talking is if like I'm talking to somebody like we about to scrap, like
in the streets, like we got beef,
like like that. His voice is like, we got beef, like we're about to. So where do you even pick up that behavior from? Like that's what my question is like, where do you even know how to act like that? My kids wouldn't even know how to act hood if they wanted to.
So let's kind of break this down a little bit, because this is prevalent, right? Like this happens where I work, like all throughout the city. This happens in pretty much any major city throughout the United States. So let me ask you this, Ryan, as a police officer, what would you do in this situation to educate these kids that their behavior is wrong? Like, how would you approach that?
I think I would approach, you just have to turn it into a positive encounter. Like let them crack on you, see what kind of relationship you have. One of the ways I've actually, developed rapport with people in that situation, I kind of gauge. Now you got to be careful with this one, because if you gauge this wrong, then you might go viral too. But if like they're capping me like that, then I might cap them back. Yeah. But a
4-year-old, like
no
nice diaper, bro.
No, but there was older kids around it that were saying stuff.
Yeah.
But I might like try to find some jokes like, oh, y'all cracking on my shoes or something like that. Like, hey man, like this is all I could afford or whatever. Like, how like this is like some way to make light of the situation. And then like, there's been times where like somebody crack on me and I'll crack back on a boy or whoever it is, and his homeboy's like, oh bro, he got you. But that kind of like breaks the ice. Cause it's like, oh yeah, what y'all thought I was just a pushover? And so, but you got to be strategic. If you don't know how to do that, then all you can do is just try to turn it into a positive. Like, hey man, like, the
department gave me these. Why are you clowning me?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think a sticker is going to get you out of that situation. Them kids, the last thing they want is a sticker. So That's where and
sticker. You don't
like,
give him a sticker.
yeah. Let's break this down. Like, so I don't think in that scenario you have to have. This is where cultural competency comes into place.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of got to know the culture in order to try to have a positive outlook on that situation. Now, and that's not even guaranteed. Let's say you are the most cultural competent guy there is. That's not guaranteed that it still comes out positive, depending on why they feel their way towards law enforcement. But it definitely helps. Like, I mean, you could be put in a situation like that, and you just, because you're from the neighborhood or know folks from the neighborhood, you just kind of know how to respond. You don't feel pressured.
Yeah.
So those cops actually kind of did it cool. They played it cool. They weren't even tripping. Like, the one officer had like a little water bottle in his hand or some Gatorade. Like, he wasn't even tripping, bro. Like, even when the little kids trying to sock him, he wasn't even tripping. So I think the officers did a phenomenal job in not like trying to go overboard.
Yeah.
But there's some issues there within the city that I think.
Yeah. And you just have to know like what battles are worth fighting and how to fight them. And what I envision happening in a situation like this is, these officers are clearly at least familiar with this area, if not those particular kids. And as long as those officers continue to approach those kids in like a behavior like that, as long as it doesn't cross the line, like, these kids are really going to harm officers and not just, a toddler swinging on you, right? Then I think what will happen is eventually those kids will be like, man, they the cool cops, man. And then they'll kind of back those officers. So like if they're with a group of their friends and one of their friends says something about those officers, they'll be like, nah, man, chill. Like, I don't know those officers for a while. And the only reason I say that is because I've seen it happen. I don't want to say this kid's name, but when I first met this young man on my precinct, probably, I don't know, 6 years ago, he was bad. Like, he was climbing through my cruiser window, like screaming at me, like, give me some money. And he could like see it through like my shirt pocket on my uniform. He's like, give me that money right there. And I'm like legit trying to push him out my cruiser. And he's probably like, I don't know, 8 at the time. I'm like trying to push him out my cruiser door because I was parked at a park. And then he's like opening my back door. And I'm like, close my back door. And he's like climbing in the back, banging on the cage. I'm like, man, this kid needs some work. But I made sure that I didn't shy away from him. I just approached it differently, right? So like, I knew before I get out the cruiser, and this is kind of funny, and I'm kind of I can't believe I'm about to tell you all this. So me and my partner would have a routine, right? Anytime we were somewhere and we would see him or like his family, we would make sure we would take stuff off of our belt that would be easily removed. So like our flashlight, baton, anything that was in our pockets, right? Like we would take it out and we would secure it in the cruiser. And then we would get out and we interact with the kids because we already knew they'd be pulling on stuff like, oh, what's this? And there's so many of them. You don't want to start pushing kids, right?
Yeah.
But we did that so often that now they're like legit family to us. Like, I know their mom, I know their grandmother, like I know all the kids by name. For Christmas, we splurge on them, we get them gifts and whatnot. And I feel like that's what I mean, or I shouldn't say I feel like, but that's what I mean when I say like you need to learn what battles are worth fighting and how to fight them. Like, I knew the long game was the way to go with that. Like, I couldn't just be like, get off me, get out my cruiser, and like snatch him up, do all that stuff, because then he would just really hate the police even more, right? Like, he already doesn't like the police. And the fact that he's doing that to me shows that he has a little bit of trust. So I might as well show him like, oh, I'm cool, man. I ain't going to trip. And I would check him. Don't get me wrong. Like, there was a couple times where he would cross the line and I'd be like, hey man, like chill. You're doing too much. Or I'll take him to his mom or take him to his grandma. But that's the long game, right? So like if you do encounter situations like that, like don't get mad. Don't run up on the parents and be like, you need to do this and blah, blah. Like, truth be told, those kids could be in a situation like I was growing up where there's not a father at home and their mother is working 3 jobs. So she's not around to really raise them. And I'm not making an excuse, but I'm just saying that is a possibility that these kids could be in. So it's up to you to be that positive role model in their life. If you so see fit, right? If not, don't complain about the stuff.
Well, my question is so like we talk about how parents need to have more accountability and be present. How do you, like, if you're the officer on that scene, is this something that you talk to them about? Like, is that, do you like Officer Johnson losing a fight with an 8-year-old? That's hilarious.
It's a big
but is that something that you would talk about with the parents, or do you just kind of like let it go? Like, who is the one that actually holds parents accountable? Like that's like kind of the better question.
Yeah, I hate to say it, man, but like I do, right? Like I have before, like I've had conversations with countless parents, but there's certain behavior that you see displayed where you're like, man, I'm not even gonna waste the energy to like go and approach this parent. Like I'd rather just pour into the kid, and then if I get a chance to meet the parent, then we'll go that route. Yeah, as bad as that sounds, like that's my approach with it. Like if I find the opportunity to talk to the parent, absolutely, I'm not going to shy away from it. But in the meantime, like I'm gonna focus on, pouring into this kid and like showing him positive interactions. And man, I don't want to say too much, 'cause I don't want to like identify this kid, but that same kid that I'm talking about bought me a Bible one year. Like I pulled
Wow.
up on him and he's like, I got you a Bible, because me and my partner Hale would read the Bible with him.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, we really would. Like me and my partner Hale, like we would pray for him. Like we added him to our prayer list. But then we would take him to the local rec center. He got to hang out with us. We would get him some food. His grandmother, his custodial guardian, knew what we were doing, and we would take him to the rec center and we would read the Bible. We got him a kid's Bible, and we open it up and be like, "All right, we're gonna start from the beginning." And then he'd read it and be like, "You know what that means?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I think it means this." And we'd break it down for him. And it wasn't, I don't know, 3-4 weeks later, he's like, "I got you something, Officer Johnson." And it was like one of the small little pocket Bibles. And he's like, "I got you this." And he like wrote his name on the inside, who it was to and whatnot. So, just be strategic when you come across situations like that. You can't always fight these situations with like anger and frustration, because you'll just make it worse.
No, and that kind of goes back to the ideology that, you got to get to know the community before you have to know them.
Yeah.
And like AJ talking about that's an occurrence on a day-to-day basis. But when I saw this, man, it definitely made me sad, because I'm just thinking like, man, these kids are out there. Who knows where their parents are at? Who knows who's watching these kids? And then we see the byproduct.
Yeah.
When these kids get in trouble, these kids get murdered. My buddy of mine, he's working in LA, South LA right now. And man, he's been telling me all sorts of stuff. He's gone on, I think he said he's gone on, I want to say like 3 or 4 homicides within the last couple of weeks. And he's telling me about these things, and these situations are no joke. Like one of them, it's all gang related. These two guys meet in the street and they start shooting at this other guy, and he's my buddy is the last person that this guy sees before he takes his last breath and dies.
Yeah.
And so it almost makes you think, like you think about the behavior that started like this at a young age, could have been avoided. Do the parents really care enough to know that their kids are out there doing stuff like this? And then the other thing too, and kind of go back to AJ's point earlier, is like, if a parent doesn't know what it's like to raise a child the right way, yes, they are at fault, but how do we fix that? Because I obviously have something to pull from. I look at my mom and my dad, and I know what to pull from, how to raise a child. My parents kind of have my grandfather wasn't, my dad's dad wasn't the best, but my dad still had a great mom, and my mom had great parents. So they even had something to look back. But if you don't have a track record of good parenting, then where do you turn to in order to be a good parent, especially if that's all you're surrounded by? So again, I'm all about people need to be held accountable for their actions, but at the same time, we have to figure out ways that we can educate people. And so people always ask me the question, do I think systematic racism exists? And I say yes, but not typically in the ways that people genuinely think it does. Yeah. This is kind of where we see systematic racism to me, because you have generations of people that have not really been taught how to live for whatever reason, because of the lack of money that's been in the community, for the lack of education in the community, for the lack of resources in the community. And so a lot of this stuff is generational. So because it's generational, that means a systematic problem that we have, as opposed to the systematic racism where people say, oh, well, cops are part of this corrupt system and they're out there shooting black and brown people just because they're racism. That is not what systematic racism looks like. That's officers doing their job and trying to go home at night. But when I see behavior like this, that to me is what systematic racism has looked like or has transpired into, because of the lack of resources, generationally speaking. Now we also have to equally say, though, because the argument, the devil's advocate, is, well, there's still white people that live in trailer parks that never had resources and things like that. So for sure, that's one thing to be considered, undoubtedly. But that's also a systematic issue. So we have systematic issues within our country. How do we fix those systematic issues? And I know that's a loaded question, but I pose that to you guys, everybody that's watching right now. What do you guys think? Somebody go ahead, AJ.
I don't really think it's a loaded question, man. I think it's a great question. And I think we should really like maybe just focus on this for a while because it is important, especially with this comment that Brandon just put up. He said, I am a DC special police officer, and the youth in DC are so untouchable between the parents and the laws. Talking to the parents usually makes matters worse, and they almost always take the child's side. That's a trend. That's a nationwide trend, and it's the same where I work. There's a point system for juveniles, and this is not an exaggeration by any means. If we catch a juvenile in a stolen car, they stole your car and they're driving around in it, we pull them over, we get the juvenile. We don't take them to juvenile corrections. We don't take them to juvie. We take them to something called a reception center. And once again, not an exaggeration, when we drop them off, before we walk them through the doors, the person at the reception center goes, take the handcuffs off. We take the handcuffs off of them. They walk them in, they get them a drink, they get them a snack, and then they put them in a room where they play video games while the other person in the reception area calls their guardian or parent to come pick them up. Now, there's a point system. So if there's a gun in the car, if there's dope in the car, you add points. And when you reach a certain amount of points, then you go to a juvenile detention center. But that has kind of instilled that mentality in a lot of juveniles that they're untouchable. I got caught in a stolen car. The police picked me up, took me to a place. I got free drinks, free food, got to play Xbox 360 or PS5 or whatever the new system is with my homeboys. Then they called my parents, got picked up. I'm going to go out and do the same thing because there was no repercussion for my actions, right? So you have to ask yourself in that situation, okay, if I can't arrest this kid and change the mentality, then what can you do? And what has worked for me is I've put myself in the position to where me being disappointed matters to them because they look up to me so much and they know that I see something in them that a majority of times they don't even see. And I big them up every chance that I get. Like, man, you're so much better than this. Catch them in a stolen car. What are you doing? Do you not know that you're throwing your future away? Like, don't you know that you could legitimately be anything that you want to be? And I'm not just saying that because it's the cliche thing to say. Like, I'm saying that because I was in your shoes once. Like, I'm saying that because when I look at you, I see a doctor, I see a scientist, I see a police officer, I see an NBA, NFL player, like whatever it is. And when you constantly deliver that message over and over and over again, and they see that you believe that, they don't want you to be disappointed in them. And that is what you can do to put yourself in a position to truly make that change. And I've seen it work time and time and time again. Teenagers who I've been in their life since, before they were teenagers are rebelling against their parents and getting bad grades. And you know what puts the fear of God in them? I'm going to call Officer Johnson. No, don't call Officer Johnson. I don't want him to know. Not that I'm going to show up and beat him up or I'm going to show up and cuss him out. I'm going to show up, I'm going to sit him down and be like, what are you doing, bro? Like, is this really what you want? Like all the time I spend away from my family pouring into you, is this where it's going to end up? All the money I've taken out of my family's bank account and poured into you and your family, is this where it's going to end up? And it gets them wheels turning like, wow, like this guy really believes in me. I want to make him proud. And we talked about it, right? Like a lot of these homes lack positive father figures. So they don't have someone that they want to make proud. They don't have somebody that they want to go home to and go, I just got this job, or, I just did this. These are my grades. Like they don't have that. So why? Like what's the reward for doing that? To where if you could come into these areas and be that person, and it might take time. It's going to be hard. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be hard. I ain't seen an easy one yet. But it's worth it. So instead of getting frustrated with the system, what I did is I found a way around the system to still have the same impact.
Well, that kind of goes into what Will Davis says right here. Will Davis says, I think looking at history can point us in the right direction. How have systematic issues been broken before? It took people with the vision to stand against the norms despite the opposition. It takes time, but as time has shown, vision and diligence will, with making that vision a reality, changes society. And I think you're absolutely right, AJ and Will. I mean, I think it takes people kind of going against the opposition.
Yeah.
And I pose this question today, not from a negative state of mind, but in a positive, like how can we turn the system around? How can we make it change?
Yeah.
But we have to first, in order to make it happen, we have to first acknowledge that there is a problem. And, I think this is important to talk about. And it kind of actually brings me up into the other conversation for today. And it actually kind of ties in, is we look at the behavior. So when kids have this behavior at a young age, it doesn't just stop. Like they kind of carry over into adulthood, and they just feel untouchable. Like I can get away with whatever. And then sadly, what happens over time is they don't get that second chance. They don't get that other opportunity, either whether because they got arrested or they got killed. And what we have done in society is we have found ourselves making excuses for our actions rather than saying, you know what, look, let's draw the line in the sand, and we need to correct this behavior. And I say that to go, I'm going to transition to Jaylen Walker. So the Jaylen Walker video went viral. Let me just break this down for you guys real quick. So that way, if you guys are not familiar with Jaylen Walker, oh man, Liddell, we got to get you on. I'm going to have you on my podcast here pretty soon. Liddell's a good guy, man. I love Liddell. He's from Texas. Let me give you guys insight to this Jaylen Walker situation real quick. So Jaylen Walker was pulled over by a police officer for a traffic violation. The Jaylen Walker refuses to pull over, refuses to yield to officers, thus creating a pursuit. During the pursuit, Jaylen Walker pulls out a gun and fires at officers. Shortly thereafter, Jaylen parks his car. He bails out of the car. As he bails out of the car, he's seen exiting the vehicle with a ski mask on. So then a short run occurs after that. You have about 8 officers now that are chasing him. And keep in mind, the officer that was chasing him initially put it out on the air like, hey, he just shot at me from his car. So that's the first thing to consider, is like there's a frame of mind. AJ, let me ask you, as a police officer, if your partner tells you that they're chasing somebody that has just shot at them, what's your mindset at that point?
They're willing to use deadly force. So I'm going to do whatever I can to stop that threat.
Exactly. So you know that the stakes have just been leveled up because you have a guy that's willing to commit an act of violence against an officer. So anyway, all these people are chasing him. They try to tase him, and the taser's ineffective. So this is at nighttime. As they're chasing behind him, Jaylen turns quickly towards the officers. Now, each officer has to make an individual decision of whether or not they feel like their life is being threatened or the life of somebody else is being threatened. And based on that decision, they have to affect some type of use of force in order to stop that threat. In this scenario, the choice was deadly force because they had to stop him from doing what he was doing. So they elected to shoot. Now, they shoot 60 plus times. Now, granted, it seems like a lot. When you watch the video, it definitely sounds like a lot. And I want you to understand, if you're watching this video, every single officer is going to have to account and give a recount or a account for why they decided to shoot that many times. But before we even get to the amount of times they shot, this is what kind of disturbs me. It kind of goes back to this whole conversation we've been having. Everybody was saying the narrative is that Jaylen Walker was out there just delivering food as an Uber driver and was just on his way home, and police just ran up behind him and shot him and killed him. That was the narrative. And so we immediately run to the defense of Jaylen Walker because he's a black man shot by police. And so we immediately excuse every single action that he did prior to law enforcement utilizing deadly force against him. We just throw all that stuff out the window. And what we focus on is that officers shot 80 times or 60 times, however many it was. I think it was 60 or 80 times. We're focusing on that. And so my question becomes is, when did we get to a point in society where we negate bad behavior that caused a bad response and just go right towards the response of the officers? So if you look back to time with these kids, you look back to videos like this with these kids, we enable them. Somebody said it earlier in our comment sections. We enable them to do, and we encourage behavior, and we encourage this behavior by our lack of punishment or our lack of accountability, our lack of telling them this isn't wrong. When we tell these kids that it's not wrong, when they don't get in trouble, when people just applaud it or say it's cute, now what we're doing is we're saying your behavior is okay. Continue to do that. So the same thing with Jaylen Walker, when we just go to, hey, he was just an Uber driver delivering food, and we negate everything else, we're saying your behavior is okay. Who cares what you do? The officers are supposed to respond this way and that way. And so that's where we come to in society. And I want to spend some time talking about that because that's a very, very dangerous place to be. When you have people that feel empowered to go out there and commit home invasion robberies, when you have people empowered to walk into these stores and take whatever they want out of the store because there's no repercussions, that's where we got. And we talked about this last week with Artie, and even Artie said it. And Artie is one of those guys that's like, hey, he's big on criminal justice reform, but even he is like, hey, look, I'm not saying there doesn't need to be punishment. I'm just saying there's got to be a way for punishment. So what you guys got on that?
Billy, you got anything before I jump in here? I know I've been talking for a while. Billy's like, no, please don't put me on the spot. I'm on camera. I'm uncomfortable. Did you see the video from, I think, New York, where the guy kind of came behind or not kind of, but he came behind the counter, got into it with the clerk, and the clerk put out a knife and stabbed him.
I did see that.
And the guy died, and the clerk.
And they charged the clerk.
Yeah, they charged the clerk for murder or homicide or whichever. But it puts you in a unique position. And I think when we talk about these topics such as this, like, we have to do our best to try to put ourselves in everyone's situation. So like the same thing with like the video with those little kids, like when I see a video like that, I immediately try to put myself in like those little kids situation, like what their circumstance may be, what it may not be, why they're doing that, why they feel empowered to do that, just to kind of give you different insight. So first put yourself in the situation of the criminal, right? You for whatever reason, you don't have a job, you want to make some quick bucks, whether you're addicted to drugs or whether you just want some money, right? Now to pay bills. That you could go into this store and load up and no one's going to stop you. No one's going to do anything to you. So why not? Right? You're a criminal. You don't care, especially if there's no fear of repercussion. Why wouldn't I do it? Aside from my moral compass, which clearly doesn't exist to some people, right? So why not? So then you try to put yourself in the position of the store owner, who may have worked their entire life to establish this business. It is the way that they feed their family. It is the way that they make extra money to send back to other loved ones, to support extended family. And you have the same person coming in the store over and over again and just stealing and nothing's happened to this person. So you decide to do something about it. And then an altercation turns into someone losing their lives or like a use of force or something like that. It puts you in a really, really crappy situation. And I feel like we don't think that far ahead when we're creating these policies. And I say we collectively, when we are creating these policies, such as he's just shoplifting, slap on the wrist, or we're gonna get rid of taking juvenile straight to juvenile detention. We're going to create these diversion programs where you take them and they immediately go back to their parents. It may sound good initially and your heart may be in the right place, but we don't think long term, meaning, okay, when that same juvenile gets out of that diversion program, what's that doing to his or her mentality? Is it reinforcing that bad behavior? Or when that criminal now knows nothing's going to happen to me when I steal, what's that doing to that criminal's mentality? Is it reinforcing that negative behavior? And I think that's what we're starting to see, like, really nationwide.
Yeah, it's been going on a lot. It's scary, man. I mean, we're living in some crazy times where you're seeing, I don't know if it's like this in where you're at in Ohio, AJ, but out here, especially in LA area, man, it is like literally the Wild Wild West. People walking into the stores, walking out with whatever they want.
Yeah.
Fire, shootings in the street, like broad daylight, but that started from somewhere. And here's the sad thing is, like, all these, even these gang members, I mean, these gang members are somebody's family member. That's somebody's son, somebody's daughter. It's somebody's dad. And it just makes me think, like, man, like, why, what do we have to do in order to curb that behavior at such a young age? But we encourage it. I mean, think about the music. Think about the music that people listen to and how it encourages this behavior. And we promote it around. It's, it's entertainment, is this, is that, we put it on, live TV and we award it at, award ceremonies and all these because it got the record label of the year or whatever. But needless, we negate the fact that it's promoting violence and killing and this and that. And so, and we give, and then they stand up on stage and say, I just want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for give me this award that you just promoted all this violence behind. And it's like, So I think that like those are systematic issues that I think need to be repaired. And we're so busy being distracted by some of the wrong things. And I hate watching. I mean, you see it all the time in politics. We're talking about frivolous things in politics. Watching politics is watching like two little kids fight. That's what it's like.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And I think pride goes a long way, man. Like imagine living in a community where everyone took pride in that community. The store owners, the people who live there, the police officers, the firefighters, the mayors, the city council, all the elected officials, the custodian workers, the McDonald's, the fast food workers, like everyone took pride in that area. Can you imagine what it would look like if someone did something wrong in that neighborhood? No one would stand for it, right? The mayor wouldn't stand for it. City council wouldn't stand for it. The police wouldn't stand for it. The community definitely wouldn't stand for it. And I feel like that is what we are getting further and further away from. The music's kind of been there. I mean, look at what we grew up on. NWA, F the Police, right? Like some of the lyrics are getting more vulgar and crazy. And it's a lot more easier to get your hands on and listen to than it was back in the day because we was carrying cassette tapes around. I had to know Skip Boy in my pocket.
Yeah, remember it had like explicit language, and I don't even think they put that on a lot of this stuff anymore. And if they do,
yeah, I think they have to. Yeah,
And the other thing too is like, have you listened to some of Cardi B's like lyrics lately, bro? Like
they
she
wild.
way worse, way worse than Lil Kim, bro.
I don't
like,
know, man. Lil Kim was
Lil' Kim
wild,
was
bro.
edgy.
Back in the day.
She was, bro.
Lil Kim was wild back in the day.
But it's like Lil Kim was not that wild, actually.
so Lil Kim, yeah. So for me, like when I look at this, I go, okay, what's different? What was not happening back then that is happening now? And at least for me, like I listened to, Eminem, like when Eminem's album first came out, he was talking about killing his wife, like all sorts of crazy stuff.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, I mean, it was some wild music was coming out back when we were growing up. And people talked about like this is crazy, right? Like I can't believe we're letting our kids listen to this. And the video games are wild too, right? Like you see some of these video games, I'm like, you just chopped his head off, like that's crazy. But looking back at it, right, we had Mortal Kombat with fatalities. But what was different, at least for me, is there was a sense of pride, like where you lived and where you were raised, and even like I hate to say it, but it was the reality. Like even the dope boys, they took pride in that area and they would look out for like the little homies, right? Like you walking to and from school, anybody messing with you, hey man, leave a little homie alone. Like let him go to school. Throw you a couple dollars. They get you a bag of chips and some now and laters and a little huggy, for lunch. Like, but that was like the real thing. Like they be posted up on the corner selling crack all day long. But they took care of the community, paying people's rent, filling up refrigerators, buying trucks full of turkeys. Like these are all things that like at least I've seen growing up, and we've gotten so far away from that. And I'm not saying that all the dope boys should, pour into the community. I'm just saying as a whole, because the model that I gave you before was as a whole. Imagine if everybody in that community took pride into the community. It was the same way, right? Like we had my grandmother watched everybody's kids and she would beat them like they were her own, right? Like she pulled a switch out and tear her ankles up, right? The store owners knew the youth coming in and the people who were coming in who may be on hard times right now, and they would give them like a loaf of bread or some groceries or some ham or whatnot. And I feel like that is what we're getting so far away from. And that's why we're starting to see these things, because I'll be honest with you, man, and this is going to sound, this is going to upset some people. Like, I've had the success that I've had in the two areas that I've worked because I've taken pride in that area that I work. And I feel like as a profession, we are not taking the pride in that job or in those areas that we should. And I've seen it. And I'm not saying that officers don't do a great job, so don't take it that way. I'm not bashing the profession by any means, but that's why I've had the success I've had. And I'm talking two very, very bad areas in a very major city that has insane crime. I took pride in those communities. When I would see a kid doing something crazy, I would have a talk with them. I would talk to their parents. I would show up to the school. If I knew that the rec center was having fights at the pool, I would get to know the employees at the rec center, and I would give them my phone number, and I would say, hey, if you see this problem kid or these problem groups show up, you call me, and I'm going to show up no matter what, and I'll be there. I'll sit there the entire time because I take pride in that community. If I knew that home invasions were going up, I would patrol that area nonstop. Like when I'm doing paperwork, I would park in specific areas. Like I took so much pride in those areas, and that's why I've had the success. And it's tough. It's very time consuming. Luckily for me, I have a wife that supports it. You know, I've been there off duty before. I've financially poured into that area. But as a profession, when we talk about these problems, and sorry I'm rambling right now, but I'm clearly passionate about this.
No, it's good.
That's what we need to do. We need to take pride in these areas like they're our own homes. Like if you look at your precinct, or if you look at like the area you work, like it's your house, like your mom lives there, like you live there, like one of your loved ones live there, then you'll start to see the difference in how you police that area.
Well, I was just about to say that, like, you know, that's one of the things I always did, is I always like to treat the area that I patrolled in like it was my own community.
Yes.
Like, you know, if, you know, I wanted to be that officer, that good officer that my wife or kids will get in the event that they needed to call the police. You know what I mean? I don't want to be
Right.
that guy that's like, oh man, why did this person show up?
Right.
So no, I think you're absolutely right, Age. And I think one thing that is worth mentioning too, before we start to close up, is like, you know, nowadays, because you made the point of like what's different between now and what it used to be. Now, Will made a good point here a little earlier.
belt.
He said it's because we're older now. You know, he said, yeah, the belt, that's a huge thing. But we are older now. And you know, it's funny. I was driving a few weeks ago, and I was talking on the phone to somebody, and somebody rode past me, and they just had this loud exhaust system. I'm like, in my mom, like,
so annoyed
why
now. Like,
I'm like, why does your car got to be that loud? Yeah, but you know what's funny though is like, I'll never forget in high school, I wanted to have like a loud car. Like I wanted to have the little Flowmaster and stuff like that.
oh,
because
you was
that
one of
was
them
what was
Fast
cool.
and Furious boy. Yeah, that's who
yeah.
buys the tickets right there, Billy.
Hey,
That's the guy.
Fast and Furious
straight
11.
up, straight up, you better believe it. You better believe it. So, but it was funny because I'm thinking like, man, look at me. Now I'm all old and like getting irritated and bothered by those things.
Facts.
And so to Will's point, yes, we are older, but I think one of the things that's also true is these kids have access to so much more than we had access to. I don't know if you guys ever remember those DVDs that I think it was like at what was it called? Not two something for TV, Too Hot for TV or something like that. Do you remember that?
Oh, the commercials. Yes, bro. The commercials come on
It
late.
would show like some crazy stuff like pursuits where people would die. I remember one time I saw like oh, they did talk about something. He
bro,
looking through the squiggly line. He talking about, you know, BET Uncut. That's what AJ talking about. I'm talking about, it was like, it's called Too Live for TV.
I know what you're
like
talking about. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. But it was like some very gory stuff. Like one time they showed on this video where these guys in a foreign country got tied up to a TV or tied up to a tree, and they set the tree on fire.
His faces of death, wasn't that?
That's what
It was something like
yeah.
that, but it was just like kind of crazy stuff that you wouldn't dare put nothing like that on TV.
Right.
But now you get on your phone on Instagram, and all that has is you just click that little bypass button that says graphic content. You just say, hey, watch anyway, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now you got kids that are able to see
anything in the world.
And so and it's not just kids, it's adults. We've become desensitized to watching death, to pulling out a phone. And we talk about this a million times, but to pulling out a phone before you actually render aid to somebody. So I think that's also what's going against these kids right now. And we're making things too, like where with TikTok, where all these challenges, you know, where you're doing some crazy challenges, but for the sake of popularity. Oh, I want to get followers. It's when I go and speak in schools, it's crazy how much they put social media status on a pedestal,
bro.
Like when they find out how many followers, I mean, AJ, you know this, when they find out how many followers you have. Billy's been with me a few times. Like they'll see, like, remember that one time we went to a school, Billy, and it was like, and those kids was like, oh man, he got clout. Remember that?
Yeah. Yep. That's when I learned what clout meant.
Yeah, I had to define it for Billy. I had to pull out the Urban Dictionary for Billy and let him know what clout meant. But it's crazy. These are middle school kids, and so it's very frightening. We had Colin on here, Kochner on here a few years ago. Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this whole idea of what kids are watching and stuff. And it's scary, man. I got 3 children, and raising them is so hard. Telling them no to certain things, in a sense, like they want to watch the iPad all the time or they want to watch TV. And me and my wife have to set rules like, no, you're turning it off. Hey, your screen time is cut down. But then their friends or whoever they're around, they're like, they can watch TV endlessly. They can watch however much time on the iPad or the phone. Where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
And I know we've kind of gone off on a tangent and we start kind of shifting the coin here, but I think this is important dialogue to have. And so my prayer is that me and my wife stick to our guns. And even though it may not be popular for them to not be able to partake in certain things now, my prayer is that they later on will see down the line, like, you know what, like, I'm glad my mom and dad shielded me from certain things at a certain age. Because if you're not watching the things, like, just if you're listening to this in your car, you're listening to it right now, if you have a child, sit down next to your child and watch them as they're watching YouTube and watch some of the ads that pop up.
Oh, hey, my son would watch like YouTube live, just like stupid toy stuff in the chat, like porn spam.
Bruh.
Like, click here, even in the YouTube, like a kid's live stream. So yeah, definitely watch out for that.
And it's crazy because on me, if you don't know no better, you just think, oh man, like it's kids YouTube. They create kids YouTube for a reason. You would think like, oh, this is for kids. But the ads, the stuff in the comment box, if you're not watching, my wife, shout out to my wife, she's a freaking amazing superwoman, but she be on them like white on rice. And so she'll see something pop up and she's like, oh, nope, looks like we ain't watching that show no more. And so that's when we talk about these kids earlier on in the video and we talk about being parents and being a good parent. That's what it means. That's what it means to be present. Yeah. That's what it means to know what your kids are watching, to know who your kids' friends are, and not saying yes to everything. Yes, it's hard. Sometimes I want to say yes to my kids because sometimes just get them to be quiet. But the hard thing is to say no sometimes. So, and I'm just being transparent. This is a family podcast. I'll be transparent.
Well, it kind of seemed like all this boiled down to it starts in the home, because it's hard. It's hard to think of how do we change society as a whole. That's almost like unreachable, you know. So like AJ, you talked about this a lot. It starts in the home, but also like taking pride in your community. I think that's where the importance of church is, or like your local community. Like a church isn't just somewhere you go on Sunday to feel good and leave. You know, it's like that can be your family away from your family. That like community used to matter, but we're like sprinting in the direction of no, self is important. Look at only watch out for yourself. We need to get back to where we actually care about our community, actually doing things in our community.
To your point, Billy, the church aspect is huge because if you go to like a good church, then you don't feel so bad at saying no because now you have a village that's on the same
and you have dozens of other good male and female role models there, you know, that you can trust.
Exactly. So when, you know, it's not just me saying no, you have a village saying no to certain things, but when you just allow your kids to just be hanging out with whoever, it's not surprising when you see behavior like this. So this is for that mom who's working super, super hard right now. And she is, you know, she don't have the husband in the house and she's trying to do things on her own. This is for you. It's like, even though you're trying your hardest, is that much more important to just know, okay, well, if when I'm not here, who is in the village also helping me raise my son? Because if you're your daughter, because if you allow your son or your daughter to just kind of be with your friends, that's okay. But make sure you know who your friends' parents are or their friends' parents are. Make sure you know what their values are. You may not always be able to be there, but that's what it takes a village. It truly does take a village to raise a child. And you can depend on that village when you're in your absence because you are trying your hardest to make a living. But that doesn't mean that we just step away and say, hey, look, it's a responsibility of somebody else. We have to get involved. And so we talked about some things today, obviously the kids that were acting up. And then we transitioned to talk about Jaylen Walker, but I think it's truly all connected. I mean, it's truly all connected when we start excusing behavior, if I'm going to excuse you from running from the cops and then running out of your car with a freaking ski mask on and then shooting around from the car. And then I want to say, oh, well, shame on the officers for shooting you 60 times.
Yeah. AJ, I have a question. And I interrupt Brian?
No, but,
so like I guess it's easier said than done. Like, just go find a community, you know? So let's say you're in one of these major cities surrounded by poverty and crime. Like, where do you see people going to find community? Or like, is there a tangible Is it the local churches? Is
Well, these
it,
churches, these communities got churches. I tell you
okay,
that.
so where do you see it happen
but
positively,
it,
you know?
but even that, and I'm man, I hate saying this, but it, I want to be real in this podcast, man. Like even some of those churches in those communities can't like be trusted. I hate to say I've
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah, you can't just blindly
So
trust anyone.
Absolutely right.
so what I'm saying is, I'm speaking to the law enforcement officers out there because that's the overwhelming majority of people that we're speaking to on this platform is you be the community. Like
Got it.
you be that person that people can come to, because the unfortunate reality is a lot of these places don't have a lot of places to go to where they could have that sense of community. I'll just give you an example, right? So the area where I used to work until very recently, they had rec centers, they had libraries, they had churches, schools, you name it. They had all these great state of the art facilities that the city paid a lot of money for, multiple millions of dollars for these facilities. But when these facilities are built, who goes there? The same group of people that you probably need to avoid because they're reinforcing that behavior that you're trying to get away from. If that makes sense, right? So like when you go to the rec center, there's basketball courts, 4-square tetherball, jungle gyms, rock climbing walls, like all of this really cool stuff. But those same kids that are fighting, using profanity, carrying guns, driving stolen cars, robbing people are going to that rec center. So when you go there, your network grows, but it grows with the people whose behavior is not what you're trying to align yourself with. So what I'm telling officers is you have to be that person. You have to be that person that when you show up, people are excited, like, oh man, it's Officer Johnson, it's Officer Tillman. Like, I know he's going to bring positive energy my way. Like, he's going to big me up. He's going to tell me how great I am. I can't wait to tell him what's going on in my life. Like, you have to be that person. And then you have to find like-minded people in those communities. So what I did is I would start going to the rec centers, and I got to know the manager of the rec center whose heart was in that community, born and raised in that community. And we started brainstorming. And then I started meeting clergy members at churches. And this one kind of took a while because I would go to some churches and I'm like, something just doesn't feel right here. I'm gonna go to the next one. Something just doesn't feel right here. I'm gonna go to the next one. I'll find somebody. I'm like, ooh, boom, this is my guy right here, Charles. What can we do? How can all three of us come together and be that? And then when kids see that, like, man, hold on. Officer Johnson knows Mr. Will and Charles from the church down the street, and they all hang out, and they all went in and bought a splash pad for this family right here. Man, they are so dope. Like, I want to be like them when I grow up. And that's when the mentality really changes, because a lot of these kids, they see cars, big rims, nice houses, flashy jewelry, pockets full of money, and they go, I want to be them when I grow up. Knowing what they do is they sell drugs, they rob people, they're dope boys, they're stick 'em up boys, right? Like they're all of these things that we don't want them to be. But then when you bring in that positivity, and you still have all of those things, right? Like, I still have a nice house, I still have a nice car, I still have money in my bank account. I might not carry a lot of money around with me, right? But let me show you what a credit card is. Then it inspires them to be something positive. Like, wow, well, I want to be like that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, I mean, you're saying, though, it's not easy. It takes individuals with a position willing to step up and do the work, you know?
It does. And like,
Which is good.
This is where I lose people. This is where I lose people is you can't complain about like the area that you live, that you work, if you're not being that guy. Like, if you're not like, man, I wish I could tell you how many times I've left my house off duty to go pick up a kid and drive him, around the block a couple times, or, take him to McDonald's just to have a talk with him because his mom is just fed up with him. Right. How many times I've filled up refrigerators, like how many times I've gotten in trouble from my coworkers and supervisors because I spent too much time at a house trying to pour into these families. Like, it takes sacrifice, it takes time, but it's worth it.
Well, that kind of goes into what the beginning of the podcast was, when we had that person that wrote in and said that some of his FTOs, his field training officers, have told him that he's taking too much time on a call and he needs to hurry up and wrap it up. And so that kind of goes back to AJ's point. Like, we have to be able to change behavior on our end as well. You
Yeah.
can't treat every person like they're just another call. You got to be able to pour into them and really treat them like they're your own family member, your own mom, your own dad, your own sister, your cousin, whatever it may be. And that's how true change starts, at least from the law enforcement side of it. So, guys, this is a great conversation. I appreciate it as always. Everybody that's been interacting in the comment section, you guys truly, truly mean the world to all of us. That's what allows us and keeps us from coming back for more. So if you guys like this podcast, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe
Smash the
button,
like button.
smash the like button now. Share it with everybody, all your friends and family members. Let them know that this is a podcast that they need to be tuning into. With that being said, y'all, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Let 'em have it. Savage on the set. Oh no, it's the Bobo Ryan Tillman. Let 'em have it. Savage.